In the last decade of the 20th century, America's condition, though not perfect, was about as near to it as human prospects can get. In the great world, our only serious enemy, the Soviet Union, collapsed like something made of toothpicks without a shot being fired. America began this century as the newest and the least of the candidates for great powerdom, and now ended the century as the only great power in the world. At home, prosperity, riding a tide of high technology, was its highest in history and still rising. Things were good, incredibly good. So why weren't Americans blissfully happy? Well, the incredible speed of change, however beneficent, is simply too fast. Our newest tool, the computer chip, was said to double its efficacy every 18 months, making everything, including jobs, obsolete faster. In world affairs, we slew the dreadful dragon, as our CIA chief then put it, only to see lots of little poisonous snakes come out. In 1991, we crushed the one in Iraq, but he was soon up and hissing and threatening again, as was the one in Yugoslavia and the one in Palestine. And finally, there was the problem of the president, the one officer the whole people may vote for and with whom they have the strongest tie. The great nation that had it all faced the new century uneasy.
The events of the year just ended, the revolution of '89, have been a chain reaction. Changes so striking that it marks the beginning of a new era in the world's affairs. Think back just 12 short months ago to the world we knew as 1989 began.
In film, actor Kevin Costner was the new Prince of Hollywood. His first effort as a director was the epic western Dances with Wolves, the saga of a disillusioned army officer befriended by Native Americans.
We spent 5 months in South Dakota working on this. Kevin put his entire back into it, and we backed him up, we followed him, we did what he wanted, and he demanded a lot as a director, and a first-time director, and he did a magnificent job.
The film was a hit with critics and audiences alike, and won Best Picture of the Year at the Academy Awards. But the main story shaping 1990 and the coming year originated in a small Middle Eastern kingdom called Kuwait. Iraqi forces spilled over the border of Kuwait, quickly seizing the Persian Gulf country to its south. Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein vowed to turn Kuwait to rubble if any outside powers tried to intervene.
Saddam Hussein became very upset with the Kuwaitis and the Emiris in the United Arab Emirates for producing more than their agreed upon quota of oil. And of course, Iraq attacked Kuwait, went through Kuwait very, very quickly, and stopped on the Saudi border. They had not only threatened Kuwait, but they had threatened the United Arab Emirates. In order to get the United Arab Emirates, you have to go right down the coast, and to do that, you go right through the Saudi oil fields, you go right past Bahrain and the Bahraini oil fields, and if you go all the way down into the United Arab Emirates, you've got them all. So it was important that if we were going to do something militarily, we had to do it right then, because we had to secure the ports along the Gulf.
Air and naval blockades were quickly erected to prevent any arms shipments to the hostile power. The UN Security Council called for an immediate withdrawal of Iraqi troops, but Hussein only grew more belligerent, threatening the mother of all wars if the United Nations tried to dislodge his claim on Kuwait. 1991 began with no solutions in sight. With the blessings of the UN, President Bush secured a multinational force to return Kuwait to its people.
The obvious beginning was on the 17th of January, our time, Riyadh time, okay, at 2 a.m. in the morning, started the ground attack. They started pulling out of Kuwait City, and we accelerated the attack, and on February the 28th, we declared a unilateral ceasefire.
Allied losses were minimal, but Iraq sustained 150,000 casualties. Acting on orders from Hussein, retreating Iraqi troops set fire to most of Kuwait's oil wells before surrendering, leaving the skies over the tiny nation black with smoke.
As Commander-in-Chief, I can report to you our armed forces fought with honor and valor. And as President, I can report to the nation Aggression is defeated. The war is over.
Closing the year, basketball star Earvin Magic Johnson shocked the country when he announced he had tested positive for the AIDS virus.
We have to continue to fight this disease. We have to continue to educate young people about it because sex among teenagers is as high as it's ever been. And so we have to continue to do what we're doing. And also, we got to stop this discrimination against people who have HIV and AIDS and really continue to care for people who have it.
In Los Angeles, tensions came to a head during the spring of '92 as the 4 officers who had been videotaped brutally beating black motorist Rodney King earlier that year were acquitted of all charges. The decision sparked the worst rioting since the Watts riots of 1965.
The hopelessness and the anger and the despair was something that we needed to pay attention to. And unfortunately, once again, Los Angeles erupted, as it had done previously, and the world watched as this anger and frustration played itself out on national and international television.
Let me assure you, I will use whatever force is necessary to restore order. What is going on in L.A. must and will stop.
After 2 days of rioting, President Bush called out the National Guard, and California Governor Pete Wilson declared a curfew to stem the violence. In August of 1992, President Bush, along with Canadian and Mexican leaders, signed an agreement creating the largest and wealthiest trade bloc in the world. NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, removed barriers to the movement of money, goods, and services over the next 15 years.
Character and trust matter for President of the United States.
Meanwhile, the presidential race was heating up, and George Bush was a shoo-in for the Republican nomination, although he did not carry the support of conservative groups the way former President Ronald Reagan had. Meanwhile, on the Democratic platform, Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton confirmed the nomination of his party. Texas billionaire Ross Perot became the first viable third-party presidential candidate since Teddy Roosevelt ran on the Bull Moose ticket in 1912. When November came, Bill Clinton was elected as the nation's 42nd president, winning 43% of the popular vote.
I accept tonight the responsibility that you have given me to be the leader of this, the greatest country in human history.
Before leaving office, President Bush sent Marines into Somalia. The African nation was stricken with famine and was being held hostage by a gang of rival warlords.
Most of these children, they tell me, were literally starving 2 months ago.
The humanitarian effort focused on the distribution of food, keeping thousands from starving, while holding the warring factions in check. Back in the States, a 51-day standoff between the FBI and a heavily armed cult group known as the Branch Davidians came to a flashpoint. When federal agents raided their compound in Waco, Texas, a fire was ignited and all but 9 cult members were killed. On a more positive note, peace was finally at hand in the Middle East.
The United States is committed to ensuring that the people who are affected by this agreement will be made more secure by it. Together, let us imagine what can be accomplished if all the energy and ability the Israelis and the Palestinians have invested into your struggle can now be channeled into cultivating the land and freshening the waters, into ending the boycotts and creating new industry, into building a land as bountiful and peaceful as it is holy.
On September 13, 1993, Israel's Yitzhak Rabin and PLO's Yasser Arafat struck an agreement to give Palestinians limited autonomy on the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Back in the States, legendary football hero O.J. Simpson was implicated in the murder of his ex-wife Nicole Brown and her friend Ronald Goldman. Simpson attempted to flee authorities in the now famous televised white Bronco chase, but was later apprehended. In movies, young maverick director Quentin Tarantino won worldwide acclaim with his offbeat crime thriller Pulp Fiction. Movie fans looking for a feel-good movie were delighted with Forrest Gump. The film won several Academy Awards, and its star Tom Hanks won as Best Actor for the 2nd year in a row. At the close of 1994, former President Jimmy Carter won the 1995 began with 2 amazing finds. On January 1st, astronomers in Hawaii announced the discovery of the most distant known galaxy, some 15 billion light years away from Earth. Also, doctors at the National Institute of Health reported the first effective cure for the blood disease known as sickle cell anemia. In a shocking turn of events, terrorism struck in the heartland of America. The Alfred P. Murrow Federal Building in Oklahoma City was reduced to rubble by a bomb blast that killed 168 people and wounded 500. It was the worst act of terrorism on American soil.
Well, I think both the World Trade Center bombing and Oklahoma were harsh signals to the American public that we are not secure within our own borders, that terrorism can strike anywhere, and that you can have the world's largest standing army and nuclear missiles and radar defenses of all kinds. You can be surrounded by vast oceans, and terrorists in their mendacity will find a way to strike at the heart of the United States, and I think it is going to be one of the premier challenges of the 21st century.
The year of 1995 is best remembered for the most sensational murder trial of the century. Some estimates claim over 150 million Americans tuned into the trial as lawyers for O.J. Simpson successfully defended the former football star. The decision was a shock to the many who were sure of his guilt, and a cause for celebration for those who believed him to be a scapegoat for an overzealous and racist police department. 2 years later, a civil suit ensued, and O.J. was found liable for the death of Ronald Goldman and was required to pay $8.5 million to the Goldman family. In England, mad cow disease prompted the wholesale slaughter of cattle on the island nation. Though no evidence existed that the disease had made its way beyond the British Isles, the scare left many nations questioning the safety of their food supply. In sports, 1996 was an excellent year. Steffi Graf of Germany won the women's title at Wimbledon for the 7th time. The Chicago Bulls had a season for the record books. A basketball team that many considered the best to ever play the sport compiled a record of 72 wins and only 10 losses for the 95-96 seasons. Ended with the divorce of Prince Charles and Princess Diana after a problematic 15-year marriage. The troubles of House Speaker Newt Gingrich came to a head in the new year. In January of 1997, the 105th Congress re-elected Gingrich in spite of his ethics problem. After being found guilty of using tax-exempt money for political purposes, Newt was slapped with a $300,000 fine and a stern reprimand. It was the first time in the 208-year history of the Congress that a speaker had been sanctioned. In an odd twist to the story, former Senator Bob Dole agreed to loan Gingrich the money to pay his fine. In April of '97, the Space Shuttle Atlantis completed yet another successful mission to outer space, delivering Captain Jerry Lynn Edgar to the Russian Mir space station and retrieving Air Force Colonel John Blaha. American astronauts and Russian cosmonauts exchanged greetings and gifts during this historic event. This joint effort was a precursor for future development of an international space station, which would combine American, Russian, Japanese, and European technology for the creation of a multi-trillion-dollar research facility. In February, genetic researchers in Scotland made a monumental breakthrough by cloning the world's first adult animal. Dolly, a Finn Dorset sheep, was created after hundreds of failed attempts at the Roslin Institute in Edinburgh. It renewed the debate between those who welcome such technology and medical ethicists who shudder at the possibility of using it to clone humans. Tiger Woods broke all conventions by winning golf's most prestigious tournament, the Masters. With a record-setting score of 18 under par, 21-year-old Woods also became the youngest to ever win the event. 1997 was notable for its landmark legal battles. As part of a mass industry-wide settlement, U.S. tobacco companies agreed to pay $368 billion to help states defray the costs of smoking-related diseases.
It could be the beginning of the end of America's deadliest addiction.
In criminal law, Timothy McVeigh was found guilty of the Oklahoma City Federal Building bombing. The trial lasted only 6 weeks, and the jury unanimously voted to impose the death penalty for the offense. On a sad note, the year will be remembered for the loss of two of the era's most influential women. On August 31st, 1997, the beloved Princess Diana died in a tragic car crash in Paris.
It was, without a doubt, the death that most stunned the British public since the death of Winston Churchill in the 1960s, and the huge outpouring of grief and the expression of sorrow was really quite extraordinary.
Days later, Mother Teresa, possibly the most recognized humanitarian of the 20th century, passed away in her adopted home of Calcutta, India. The Nobel Prize-winning nun shunned the soft life to attend to the poorest of the poor as her life's work. She was 87 years of age. 1998 saw new records set in baseball as Mark McGwire slammed his 62nd home run of the season, retiring Roger Maris's 37-year-old record. McGwire would go on to hit 8 more, finishing the season with an astounding 70 home runs. Michael Jordan, considered by many to be the greatest athlete of the century, announced his retirement from basketball after a repeat of 3 back-to-back championship seasons.
I've accomplished everything I could as an individual, and right now I don't have the mental challenges that I've had in the past.
After leading the Denver Broncos to successive Super Bowl wins in 1998 and 99, quarterback John Elway retired after 16 years in the National Football League. 1998 saw Titanic fever sweep the country as James Cameron's epic film about the sinking of the famous ship became the most expensive movie in history.
For me, as the writer of the film, it was first and foremost a love story. And you know, it's funny, you know, I say Titanic was a romantic event, but I mean it in the kind of dark operatic sense of romance, where, you know, where tragedy is involved, where sacrifice is involved. And here you had, where else in history can you think of a point where so many women and so many men were torn apart and saw each other for the last time in a moment of knowing that certain death was coming?
The biggest story of 1998 was a scandal rocking the White House that led to impeachment proceedings against Bill Clinton. In 1997, a sexual harassment suit filed against Clinton by Paula Jones in 1994 was allowed by the Supreme Court to proceed. During the case, White House intern Monica Lewinsky was named as a probable witness, and word of a possible affair between Clinton and Lewinsky quickly spread. In his sworn testimony before the grand jury, Clinton insisted he'd never had sexual relations with Lewinsky. Lewinsky's co-worker, Linda Tripp, brought forth taped conversations with Lewinsky regarding the affair, and independent counsel Kenneth Starr was given permission to investigate the matter. Although the Jones suit was dismissed, Starr's investigative report went public. Clinton was finally forced to admit to his sexual involvement with the intern.
As you know, in a deposition in January, I was asked questions about my relationship with Monica Lewinsky. While my answers were legally accurate, I did not volunteer information. Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong.
On December 19, 1998, the House of Representatives impeached President Clinton on the articles of perjury and obstruction of justice. And the case to remove him from office was sent to the U.S. Senate for trial.
The Senate, having tried William Jefferson Clinton, President of the United States, upon 2 articles of impeachment exhibited against him by the House of Representatives, and 2/3 of the senators present not having found him guilty of the charges contained therein. It is therefore ordered and adjudged that the said William Jefferson Clinton be, and he hereby is, acquitted of the charges in the said articles.
Now that the Senate has fulfilled its constitutional responsibility, bringing this process to a conclusion, I want to say again to the American people how profoundly sorry I am for what I said and did to trigger these events and the great burden they have imposed on the Congress and on the American people.
As 1999 came to a close, former President Jimmy Carter fulfilled the promise he made 20 years earlier by formally relinquishing the Panama Canal to the Panamanian government, thus ending nearly a century of America's jurisdiction over one of the world's most strategic waterways. Amongst global Y2K jitters and the excitement that comes with welcoming a new year, decade, and millennium, the closing of the century brought together the global community as never before. With the aid of state-of-the-art television technology, New Year's celebrations from across the world were broadcast live in an amazing display of pageantry, color, and goodwill. Contrary to worldwide fears of a Y2K meltdown, the 20th century came to a remarkable end.
So as we ring in this new year, in a new century, in a new millennium, in the words of the old American hymn, let freedom ring.
I have found that you get a good perspective on the 20th century if you divide it into its two halves and look at them separately. In the first half, all the great decisions were manifestly wrong, had disastrous consequences. World War I was fought with wrong strategies designed to maximize bloodshed. It was ended wrongly with a treaty that brutally punished Germany's first democratic government and discredited it. Hitler, who took over, was then appeased by our side and enabled by us to launch a second and worse war with every advantage on his side. In the second half of the century, beginning with the Marshall Plan, all the great decisions were right, causing democracy to spread, converting the incorrigibles, Germany and Japan, into prosperous democracies and forces for peace in the world. Decisive steps were taken to prevent depressions, like opening up world trade, and they worked. We've had no depression since. The two mighty and ruin-spreading evils of the century, Nazism and at length communism, were beaten and destroyed.